Okay, Ty, with our ongoing discussion about what fossil fuel countries do and this debate push and pull towards exploitation and some economic short-term gains versus, of course, climate change and helping the world out, we have this clip of the Guyanese president being interviewed, I think it was about a year ago, by the BBC interviewer. And so let's watch this because I think it highlights this issue nicely.
For the
Okay.
next decade, 2 decades, it is expected that there will be $150 billion worth of oil and gas extracted off your coast. It's an extraordinary figure, but think of it in practical terms. That means, according to many experts, more than 2 billion tons of carbon emissions will come from your seabed, from those reserves, and be released into the atmosphere. I don't know if you, as a head of state, went to the COP
Let
in
me stop you
Dubai.
right there. Let me stop you right there. Do you know that Guyana has a forest forever that is the size of England and Scotland combined? A forest that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon, a forest that we have kept alive, a forest that we have kept
Does
alive.
that give you the right?
No,
Does
no, no,
that
no.
give you the right to
Does
release
that
all
give
of
you
this
the right?
carbon
Does
from...
that give you the right to lecture us on climate change? I am going to lecture you on climate change because we have kept this forest alive that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon that you enjoy, that the world enjoy, that you don't pay us for, that you don't value, that you don't see a value in, that the people of Guyana has kept alive. Guess what? We have the lowest deforestation rate in the world. And guess what? Even with our greatest exploration of the oil and gas resource we have now, we will still be net zero. Guyana will still be net zero.
Isn't there a cynicism here in Georgetown, best expressed by your vice president, who said recently, because there is this climate change imperative to decarbonize, our policy is to get as much oil out of the ground as quickly as possible. Now, he said, that's harsh for those who think that you should be environmentally sound, but that is the reality of it. Those were very honest words from your vice president.
And that is what we are, honest. We are practical.
So you're rushing to get this oil out before any deal is done, to quote Dubai COP, to transition away from oil and gas.
You can say we are rushing, but we are very practical. We have this natural resource, and we are going to aggressively pursue this natural resource because we have to develop our country. We are committed to the development of this region. We have to create the opportunity for our people because no one is bringing that for us.
Okay, well, passionate Guyanese president.
Pretty clever speaker too. Wow.
Right, right. Any
Didn't pull
thoughts?
any punches.
Any thoughts
Uh,
there, Ty?
I've heard a lot of arguments similar to this from some of my friends across Africa who consider climate change policy to basically be just one more form of colonization. Oh, you burned oil for 200 years and coal, and now everything's screwed, and we can't do that to develop our own nations. Screw you, is the general vibe I get from a lot of the global South in general, especially from people across Africa. But I think that trying to say that because we have forests, we're capturing carbon, we can take all of this and make a bunch of money exporting it to the rest of the world, it's kind of a disingenuous argument because it basically means we're responsible for the forests, but you're responsible for the oil.
Right,
It's
right.
interesting to try to frame everything in this nationalist framework because, say for example, that you could make the argument that China is the biggest polluter because it's got all the factories, but is it the biggest polluter if those factories are making stuff that's being bought all over the rest of the world? Or is everyone else that's buying products from China also culpable in those emissions and in those environmental pollutions, right? So at the same time, is Norway the greenest country in the world because it has a high EV rate and high local renewable energy production rate, has a lot of offshore wind and stuff? Or is it actually very much not a renewable leader because it can afford to do that because it has this sovereign wealth fund that is basically from selling oil across the rest of the world? So Guyana is going to be in this situation like Norway and like Venezuela and the Arab states and even the US and Canada. When you become a petrol state, you take on the responsibility of being one of the enablers of climate change. You can do things to offset it, and they argue, look, we're going to protect our forests. Hopefully they keep those forests and those forests continue to grow. That'll offset a little bit, I suppose. But the bigger question is, is it really going to end up being a boon for your people? Because as we talked about in the last episode, most of the time when a petrol state starts extracting for oils, a few people get rich, but it's not generally the thing that enriches the population. For those 1 million Guyanans, I wonder how many of them are going to become oil millionaires.
Yeah, yeah, very true. So Guyana, this is all very much Johnny come lately. The oil was quite literally discovered 10 years ago, 2015. The oil started leaving the ground basically 5 years ago. And so in the past 5 years, they have built up their sovereign fund. It's approximately 6 billion US dollars in their sovereign fund. This is for a small city-state nation of 800,000 people. They've also embarked on massive infrastructure buildings. And so they have very loudly proclaimed that they're building a dozen hospitals, they're building two new highways, they're building schools, they're building, this and that. Um, Ironically, ironically, like 10,000 spoons, ironically, they are also on the forefront of climate change because they are low-lying right by the shoreline, and that's where the population base is. Because Guyana is roughly the size of Florida, and 90%, almost 90% of Guyana still is tropical rainforest. And so they do have a robust forestry practice. It employs about 25,000 people annually, and they do export wood, but they say that they do it in such a way which is it's sustainable. They're not taking too much per year. They also receive money for their tropical rainforest, but this also is somewhat Johnny-come-lately stuff. So Norway contributes, I think, through its fossil fuel guilt to a global fund, which is something about, it's called RED, is the acronym, restoring,
Yeah.
equilibrium of the forest and whatnot. So over 5 years, Norway has given Guyana 200 million US dollars for sustaining their forests. Guyana has also signed a an offtake agreement for carbon credits with a company called Hess Corporation. So 750 million US dollars over 10 years. I don't know whether or not that will survive some of these carbon credit agreements.
It's a drop in the bucket compared to the oil sales either way.
Right.
Hopefully, it's enough to convince them to, as they use their sovereign wealth to build up and become resilient against the effects of climate change and sea level rise, hopefully, because they have the room and because they have the pressure, hopefully they maintain that rainforest while they simultaneously build away from the coast. It seems to me to be almost contradictory needs, but maybe they will be like Norway as far as petrol states and less like Venezuela, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
It's this type of argument is, I think, what absolutely frustrates people who've been working in the environment area for decades because it's very circular. You hear the same arguments time and time again. It might be a slightly different actor, but it's the same type of arguments. But, it does hit home close to Canada because over the past year and a bit, as you know, our economic world has been turned topsy-turvy. And so we are sort of desperately looking for different venues to build industries. And so, yeah, a lot of the talk, I think, sort of the main channels, a lot of the talk about Canada moving away from its oil fields, its tar sands, has really quieted down over the past year and a half. It really is not as popular to talk about because when you see in Canada auto assembly plants just leaving Canada, going bankrupt or just leaving. You see, announcements that certain prior announcements of investment are no longer happening, et cetera. Then, of course, you focus in on what you need to do immediately. It reminds me of India and their coal industry. Like, what do you want
Yeah.
us to do? We need to make money today and tomorrow. So what is it that you want us to do? So it's an
Yeah.
interesting sort of back and forth. And for the Guyanese president to be completely ready for this BBC interviewer and to
Oh, he
shut it,
practiced. He practiced that response.
yeah, and to
Yeah.
shut him down as well. I think that's a very realistic response. It doesn't help the world, but it's a very realistic response. And I think that's what all the countries are grappling with, really.
Yeah, yeah, and as you said, this week with us looking at South and Central America, it did remind me of the episodes we did about India and Indonesia, because in all of these parts, you have simultaneously great opportunity to build a future-proof economy that is in line with the green transition and energy autonomous and maintaining and rebuilding the mangroves and the rainforests that are the unique ecosystems that can save those specific places from the worst effects of climate change. And at the same time, in all of these regions, you have this constant uh, lure, this constant temptation of quick, cheap petrol money.
Yes. Yeah. And like you said, it's so difficult to be justified in criticizing, right? The Guyana is not a wealthy country, small city
No,
state that it is. It's not wealthy. And so now this is their lottery ticket and they intend to use it.
it sure is, because for 1 million people, but $6 billion already made so far, that's $6,000 a person to people that would have never seen that over the course of their entire lives before this economic turnaround. There are questions of social and environmental justice that have to be answered there because after a point, how much money do you really need for a population of 1 million?
I have the answer.
As much as you can get?
The answer that I see is Norway is a city state of 5 million people. I don't mean to be offensive, but Norway is a city state, quite frankly. And they have a sovereign fund of $1.3 trillion and counting. They don't know what to do with their money. So Guyana's got a little ways to go
Good point.
if they're going to follow the Norway example.
Good
1.3
point.
trillion dollars for 5 million people is one heck of a lot of money.
It is, it is. And there again, we have this larger question of who is actually responsible and who is actually culpable for all this.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Well, good stuff. Thank you very much. And we'll see everybody next week for the next episode.
All right. Bye.
Wind, sun, and energy.